In the weeks ahead, people in Boston will have expanded opportunities for early voting. To explain the new process is our guest, Boston's Elections Commissioner, Dion Irish. Thank you very much for being with us, Commissioner.
Well, thank you for having me, Chris.
First of all, in one sense, this is something old because it's a little bit like absentee voting, but it's also very new. And of course, talk about how early this is going to be starting for people.
Yeah, October 24th begins Boston and Massachusetts launch into early voting. So from October 24th until November 5th, voters in Boston and throughout Massachusetts can vote early. You're correct. It is very similar to voting absentee in person and absentee by mail. To take advantage of early voting, your voters can fill out an application to request that a ballot be mailed to them, and they can return that ballot by mail, or they could drop it off at one of our early voting sites. If they wish to vote early voting in person, there's no need for an application. They simply need to look at our schedule, find one of our sites. Voters can vote at any site. You're not confined to a particular precinct for early voting. So they show up at any site, and they simply get checked off on our list, and they vote.
I want to make sure we're clear about this, because this doesn't have to be the site closest to where you live. It could be the site that's close to where you work, for example.
Exactly. We want it to be convenient, so whatever site works best for you is the site we like for you to use. You're not restricted to the one that's closest to your home. If you're in East Boston, but you live in Roxbury, you can certainly vote in East Boston for early voting, and vice versa. And for anyone who's at City Hall, they can vote any day during that 2-week period, because City Hall will be our main site, and we'll offer early voting there from October 25th to November 5th every day, and we'll have 5 evenings as well at City Hall.
I like that about the hours. You get some weekend time, you get some after work time, so you're really making it convenient for people.
Yes, we went through a lengthy community engagement process to find out what early voting would look like to best serve our city. And the feedback that we got was that we should focus on evening hours, and we should focus on Saturday during the early voting period. So we've done that. We have City Hall open until 8 o'clock, 5 times during the early voting period. All of our neighborhood sites are open until 8 p.m. during the week. And on Saturday, we have 9 sites going at once, one in every city council district, and they're open from 12 p.m. until 6 p.m.
We're talking with Boston's Elections Commissioner, Dion Irish. Another option is that you can get an application even online and mail it in. Explain how that works.
Yeah, well, first, let me give you my website information. They should go to boston.gov/early voting, boston.gov/early-voting, and there'll be a complete list there of our sites and schedule, as well as instructions on how to vote early by mail if you choose to go that route. There's an application there that they'd complete and email to us or mail to us. And on October 24th, we will mail a ballot, an early voting ballot, to that voter, which they can return by mail, or they could drop it off at City Hall or at any of our early voting sites during the days and times that they're open for early voting.
Now, Massachusetts is not the first state in the country to be doing this kind of thing. What's the reason for getting away from that old do it all on election day pattern?
Sort of a rethinking of democracy and elections, and there's a trend towards just modernizing the election laws and understanding that maybe just confining an election to one particular day may not be the best way to allow participation for our voters in the United States. I think it makes a lot of sense. It makes voting easier. It takes away one less barrier to someone casting their vote. Obviously, there are probably other reasons why some folks don't participate, but this removes one of them, and now we can focus on the others.
Now, there are some trade-offs here. I mean, the city has to devote more resources to these other options, but at the same time, come election day itself, you might not have as many people that you're, having, waiting in long lines and stressing everybody out.
That's a possibility. From what we've seen in other states who have early voting, is that about 20% of the total eligible voter pool take advantage of early voting. So you can still expect a huge percentage of the majority of folks to actually vote on election day. So we're preparing for both. We're preparing to serve maximum turnout of voters on election day, but we're also hoping and encouraging and educating voters that they can vote early for this election.
What about people who might need materials in another language, let's say Spanish or Chinese? Is there a way that you making this any easier for them?
Absolutely. One of the things that we're doing to market early voting is that we have sent mailers out to each and every household in the city of Boston. If you haven't received one as yet, when you get home, and maybe they're waiting for you. It has the full schedule, and it has instructions in 4 major languages. We also have outreach materials in 7 languages that we're providing to various entities who are helping us with outreach. And we're advertising throughout the city in all the local papers, the major papers, the linguistic papers. So we really have a very diverse outreach approach, and very thankful that Mayor Walsh pushes for innovation, understands the importance of elections, and he gave us almost $700,000 in our budget to make sure that we could develop a good plan and communicate that plan to our residents.
Well, I've been voting so many years by going to a polling place. I always have this sense that I need to do that so people can screen me to make sure I'm legit. Is that going to be more of a challenge with people possibly sending things in by mail more often now?
No, voter fraud will not be a challenge. We have very good measures in place to ensure that we have a very accurate, foolproof system to verify voters. The challenge that we'll actually face is on a typical election day, you go to an assigned precinct, and the ballots that are there, your ballot based on where you live. For early voting, because anyone can vote anywhere, we will have 37 different types of ballots at those locations. And so our challenge, and we're up to the challenge, is we'll ensure that every voter gets the correct ballot based on where they actually live. But in terms of the accuracy, what we're going to be doing for early voting is, as opposed to having a paper-based check-in book that we use on election day, we're going to actually have tablets, iPads in fact, which will have the entire voter registration database. They'll all be live and connected to a central database at City Hall, so we can see in real time where activity is when folks are voting. They get checked off on the list. But we still have another verification procedure that will follow on election day itself. All early voted ballots are going to be kept in a secure vault, and on election day, they'll be sent out to their assigned ward and precinct based on the addresses of the voters, and they'll be checked off in and out as if they appeared in person on election day, and that's when the ballots will actually go through the scanners and be counted.
Christian, one thing that hasn't changed is that in order to vote, you still have to be registered, and even if you've registered before, you might have to do it again. So what's the deadline?
October 19th, October 19th, October 19th. I can't emphasize that enough. To participate in early voting or on election day, you must register or update your registration by October 19th. City Hall will be open until 8 p.m. that day if you'd like to do that in person. If you're doing that online, you have until 11:59 on October 19th.
Thank you very much for being with us. Dion
Thank you for
Irish,
having me.
Boston's Elections Commissioner. We'll have more news in just a moment.